Okay, well, it's time to get started with Lightroom 2, and the first thing we're going to do is get a little bit more familiar with the user interface. As described earlier, Lightroom 2 uses a digital darkroom workflow, and the application is broken down into different modes that we can work in. And as noted earlier, these modes are seen across the top right-hand portion of the screen: Library, Develop, Slideshow, Print, and Web. And we'll talk about all of the different controls and things that these modes engender a little bit later. But for right now, it's just important to understand that as you click any one of these, the controls and the options that you see in this left-hand panel and in this right-hand panel will change depending on the context. So right now we're in library mode, and library generally shows us at a high level, sort of like a light box, what all of our images look like, and we can control the thumbnails and other options that we'll talk about a little bit later when we're discussing the library mode. But if I switch to develop mode, you'll notice now that all of the options in these panels, except for the navigator in this case, and in the case of the right-hand panel, the histogram, everything is changed. And within these items, you can see here we have a whole list going from top to bottom. And as we click these little triangles, it will open and close the controls that are within that area. So this sort of helps you to manage the interface in terms of only looking at the controls that you want to see. And if you happen to have a couple of them open, sometimes you'll get this scroll bar, and that works as you would expect it to. You can just move up and down to see the different stuff that you want to see. And we'll talk about all of these controls and what they do, obviously, a little bit later on, but it's just important to know how the actual widgets control the user interface. Now you'll also notice there are some triangles at the top, bottom, left, and right of the user interface. Right here, for example, if I click the top triangle, that is going to hide and show the Lightroom crest, which incidentally we can change, and I'll talk to you about that later. And it'll also hide and show the different modes. So if we're going to be working in one mode for a while, you can free up some screen space by clicking this option, and you get a little bit bigger preview as you see there. And then if we move the cursor to the bottom of the screen and mouse over, this will open something called the film strip. And this is something that's really useful in the develop mode, and we're going to talk about it more in the next segment. But basically, this allows you to see which images in the sequence come before or after the current image. And it works in much the same way as the film strip in Bridge. If you click and then drag the scroll bar, you can see all of the different images that are available to you. So this is a really handy tool. And as I mentioned, there are some other options here that we'll talk about in the next section.